The year is 2019. 3.3 billion of us have supercomputers in our pockets all the time, and the answers to any of life's questions are just one Google search away. Want to know how lightning works? Look it up. Want to know how echoes work when you're in a cave? Look it up. Want to know what your persistent cough and sore throat mean? Well, actually, maybe don't look that last one up. WebMD will probably say you've got like 3 days left to live.
In ancient times, when humans couldn't understand every unusual or strange event through science, the various cultures would create their own explanations for quote-unquote supernatural events. For many, this took the form of gods or deities, for example, the Greek gods of thunder or the sea. The same thing happened in Japan, and their interpretation of the unexplained took the form of creatures called yokai. We'll talk more about specifically what yokai are as well as their origins in a bit, but for now just trust me when I say that their popularity has increased drastically in recent years. Modern media franchises originating in Japan have kept yokai circulating in the popular culture centuries after their inception. Take for example Pokemon, whose critter design borrows from yokai frequently. Even more obvious is Yokai Watch, which bases its entire plot on these creatures. Yeah. Interesting about both Pokemon and Yokai Watch, as well as many other popular franchises, is their use of yokai as a companion to humans. As mentioned earlier, yokai were originally formulated to explain supernatural events and were rather ambivalent towards humans. Sometimes, as seen with yokai of the Kitsune variety, they were even more on the antagonistic side, playing silly pranks like turning into a woman, marrying you, having your kids, and then leaving forever. You know, the usual. The role of yokai, specifically their interactions with humans and each other, have changed significantly over time. This interested me, and for my research I decided to study exactly why that is. What I found was pretty interesting, and it changed the way I look at the subject as a whole. The conclusion of my research is the understanding that rather than being set-in-stone characters with constant traits, yokai are malleable ideas that the author or narrator can do with as they please. There's no one right answer to what any given yokai is or isn't, just a set of characteristics mutually agreed upon by the culture partaking in the story. The best way to illustrate this transformation is by going back to the beginning of yokai folklore. All the way back. To the 1980s. Just kidding, it was like the 8th or 11th century depending on who you ask. As mentioned prior, the earliest versions of yokai were created as the causes of unexplained phenomena the Japanese people at the time didn't understand. Komatsu Kazuhiko, an esteemed yokai-ologist, tells a story to illustrate. A villager goes into the mountains to work, maybe to make charcoal or clear a field he tends. He spends the night in a hut in the mountains, and through the night he hears strange rhythmic sounds mixed with the sound of flowing water from a nearby brook. When he wakes up, he goes to check it out, but he doesn't find anything. This was said to be the work of a yokai called Azuki Arai, or bean washer, because the washing of beans produces a similar sound apparently. I mean, obviously, right? Of course I know what washing beans sound like. I'm like any other guy, I enjoy a good weekend bean wash. What's especially important to note here is that the phenomena is given a name. Names make sharing stories about these various happenings easier because they make the different yokai easy to identify, easy to distinguish, and most importantly, easy to remember. Fast forwarding a bit, we come to the dawn of the medieval period, where tales of yokai were becoming more and more popular as forms of entertainment. Stories were told, or now illustrated, of the yokai's mischief or their battles with humans. Despite appearances, the actual quantity of popular yokai at the time was rather small. Thus, from the creative minds of the yokai storytellers, new illustrations were printed which featured their solution to the previously limited yokai codex. What was it? Teapots, and normal pots, and pans, and fans, and plates, and lanterns. Tsukumogami is the catch-all term to describe yokai that are possessed versions of man-made objects. The word translates literally as spirits of tools that have reached 99 years of age, which is exactly the plot of the picture scroll which would first popularize this category of yokai, Tsukumogami e Kotoba. This development revolutionized the field of yokai storytelling and gave artists way more creative freedom, which is really important to the original thesis. Giving artists more ways to develop their own stories gives the whole of yokai folklore more room to expand and become influential, which is exactly what was going to happen, just not quite yet. Throw it in the oven, come back in about 350 years and check the temperature, it'll probably be ready. Now we reach the 17th century when scientific and catalogic literature really started to become popular in Japan. The early Edo period saw Zhu Ci's philosophical concept Shushigaku imported from China. The concept of Shushigaku is a promotion of human knowledge, encouraging the study of all things, and as such encyclopedic works such as the Honzu Komoku were brought into Japan and translated at breakneck speed. This encyclopedic mode, as it was called by Michael Dillon Foster, another yokaiologist, becomes relevant to our discussion about a century after the start of this trend, when Toriyama Seiken publishes his Gazu Hyakiago, the first bestiary dedicated to the compilation of yokai. This development was the start of what I call yokai watching, get it, in which authors place the yokai at an observable distance, and the entertainment derived from the stories is from the characters, the yokai themselves. Again, we see the purpose of folkloric yokai tales shifted by the authors participating in the culture. Our final stop before returning back to the future is the late 19th century, with scholar of Japanese history Inoue Enryo actively and passionately attempting to erase the concept of yokai from all of Japanese culture. Wait, weren't you guys cool with this like 100 years ago? What happened? See, Inoue was a super scholar boy, and at the time Japan was in the middle of trying to change almost everything about itself. Modernization was Japan's latest goal, and in the eyes of some, like our super scholar boy, overinflated cultural elements like yokai were seen as superfluous and unnecessary. He made it his life mission to explain away the yokai's existence through a meticulous scientific explanation of every phenomena said to be caused by them. How did he do? Well, let's see. He pretty much single-handedly caused the rise of yokai scholarship. He contributed heavily to the yokai boom, which propelled yokai back into entertainment and popular culture, and he even reportedly created a few brand new yokai of his own which would be used in media later. What was the objective again? Yeah, no, that's definitely an F. Or a D- at best. The yokai boom both caused and was caused by fantastic works such as Gegege no Kitaro by Shigeru Mizuki, just to name one. I mean, Pokemon, Yokai Watch, and countless others inspired by the culture. Without the yokai boom, none of these franchises would exist right now. As modern attitudes about what's popular with kids, and on a larger scale people in general, have developed, artists have realized it isn't as popular to tell similar stories of human versus supernatural over and over again. They definitely still exist, but much more common are tales of yokai, or beings inspired by or related to them, cooperating with humans or just otherwise being cute. I return to the example of Pokemon, where many of the characters are based on yokai folklore. Yokai Watch is one of the most popular multimedia franchises in the world right now, and Gegege no Kitaro is still incredibly popular domestically. Shigeru Mizuki's hometown, Sakai Minato, might not exist without the revenue tourism brought, and there's a whole road dedicated to the man with statues of his characters placed prominently on the sidewalk.
My main point is that the authors and artists who partake in yokai culture have incredible impact when it comes to the direction that the yokai legends will take. Different time periods have shown different behaviors be commonly accepted by the people. It just so happens that the most recent to gain traction is cooperation between human and yokai, as opposed to conflict between the two. To conclude, my research has shown me that the yokai itself isn't necessarily the most interesting aspect of yokai culture to study, but in my opinion, that would be the author behind the yokai. Even from the beginning, when yokai weren't designed to entertain, every creature had an author to its story. Here are my sources. Thank you for watching.